Welcome to the deep dive. We know there's just so much information out there, it's hard to keep up, right? So our goal here is simple. Cut through that noise, find the important stuff, and deliver it right to you. Staying informed is key. Today, we're diving into cybersecurity. Specifically, we're looking at a really big player, CrowdStrike. They seem to be genuinely changing the game for how businesses protect themselves online.
They really are. And our mission today for this deep dive is to unpack what makes CrowdStrike different. We want to look at their tech, their strategies for growth, and what the future might hold, especially if you're thinking long term.
Right. We want you to understand what sets them apart and, I guess, what it means for cybersecurity overall.
Exactly.
So maybe let's set the scene first. Cybersecurity, historically, it's been messy, hasn't it? Fragmented.
Oh, absolutely. Messy is a good word. Traditionally, businesses had to piece together their security. Like you'd get one vendor for your cloud stuff, another for identity protection, maybe another for the computers themselves, the endpoints.
And the result of patching all that together.
Well, it's complex to manage, for one, but worse, it often leaves gaps, cracks in the armor.
Okay, so that's the problem. How does CrowdStrike tackle that differently?
This is where their Falcon platform comes in. They pitch it as one of the few truly holistic, all-in-one solutions out there. Basically, a company can potentially replace that whole messy stack with just CrowdStrike.
One vendor for everything.
Pretty much, yeah. Think of it like getting one master security system instead of, a bunch of separate alarms that don't talk to each other. What strikes you about that kind of consolidation?
Well, the simplicity, right? Just dealing with one system, one vendor.
Yeah.
That sounds way easier for any IT team. Less complexity, fewer potential conflicts.
Definitely.
So this Falcon platform, let's get into the nuts and bolts. How does it actually work? What's the tech advantage?
Okay, so a key thing is its architecture. It's cloud native, meaning organizations don't have to, install and manage software on every single laptop or server. Falcon runs from the cloud. It makes deployment and updates much, much simpler, and it scales easily.
Got it. And I've heard AI is a huge part of it. Artificial intelligence, everyone talks about it. But how is CrowdStrike actually using it? What does it let them do?
Yeah, AI is absolutely central to Falcon. It's not just a buzzword here. It powers the automated threat detection and the incident response.
So it works in the background.
Exactly. Seamlessly. Most employees wouldn't even know it's there. But the AI is constantly analyzing behavior, looking for anomalies, things that look suspicious, even if it's a brand new type of attack that no one's seen before.
So it's not just relying on lists of known viruses like older systems.
Right. It's more proactive. It can spot those zero-day attacks because it understands patterns, not just signatures. It's like having this incredibly vigilant analyst watching everything 24/7 and learning all the time.
That learning aspect sounds key. And speaking of making things easier, tell me about Charlotte AI. Launched last year, you said, 2023. Designed for the security managers.
Yes, Charlotte AI. This is fascinating. It's specifically aimed at reducing the burden on those cybersecurity managers who are often just drowning in alerts.
Alert fatigue, right. Too many warnings, many of them false alarms.
Precisely. Charlotte AI autonomously filters those incoming threats. It triages them. The idea is to cut through the noise so the human team only has to deal with the actual legitimate risks.
And does it work?
The stats they've shared are pretty impressive. They claim it's 98% accurate in that triaging process. And get this, they say it's saving managers, on average, over 40 hours per week.
40 hours a week? Wow, that's basically freeing up a whole person's time. What does that let those security teams do instead?
Right. It's huge. It means they can stop just, reacting to alerts all day. They can actually be proactive.
Like
Digging into threat intelligence, maybe doing more testing of their own defenses, refining security policies, planning strategically. It shifts their role from just firefighting to being more like strategic guardians of the network.
Makes sense. Okay, so the tech sounds powerful, cloud-based, AI-driven, tools like Charlotte AI making life easier. But great tech isn't enough. You need customers to actually use it and use more of it. How's CrowdStrike doing on that front?
They have a really smart approach here, too. Modularity is key.
Modularity.
Yeah, the Falcon platform isn't just one thing. It's made up of about 30 different products or modules.
Yeah.
Things for cloud security, identity, endpoint, etc. Businesses can pick and choose, combine the modules they need for a custom solution.
So they only pay for what they need but can add more later.
Exactly. And it seems to be working. They're seeing really strong adoption within their customer base. End of Q1 fiscal 26, that was April 30th, a record 48% of their customers were using 6 or more modules.
48% using 6 or more, and that's
Up from 44% the year before. So customers aren't just signing up, they're using more and more of the platform over time.
That's a good sign of stickiness. Now, I also heard about something called the Flex subscription, launched in 2023 as well. Sounds interesting for managing budgets.
It is interesting, very clever actually. The Flex subscription lets businesses shift their contracted spending between different Falcon modules during the year.
So if their needs change mid-year, say a new threat emerges, they can move budget to that module.
Precisely, without needing a whole new contract negotiation. It gives them flexibility, potentially saves them money, and it probably encourages them to try out other modules too.
Okay, that makes sense. But you mentioned something, reflexes. What's that about?
Ah, yes, reflexes. This is what management calls a really interesting phenomenon they're seeing with Flex customers.
Go on.
It describes how these Flex customers are using up their initial budgets really quickly, finding value fast, and then coming back proactively to spend more.
So they burn through their allowance and then immediately ask for a bigger one.
Kind of, yeah. They gave an example. 39 Flex customers recently used up their entire budget within the first 5 months of what were supposed to be 35-month contracts. And then they expanded their spending.
5 months instead of nearly 3 years. That's rapid.
It is. Management sees it as proof that customers find so much value so quickly that they just naturally want more. It's like a reflex see value, get more value. It also suggests the platform gets deeply embedded very quickly.
That reflex idea really does paint a picture of deep integration and satisfaction. It implies they're seeing a strong return on investment almost immediately.
Absolutely. It suggests the value proposition is really hitting home. When you're willing to up your spending that much faster than planned, it's usually because something is working very, very well.
Okay, so innovative tech, smart customer strategies like modularity and flex leading to these reflexes. It all sounds good, but ultimately it has to show up in the financials. What are the numbers telling us?
Well, the numbers are generally strong, but with a caveat. They ended their first quarter of fiscal 2026 with annual recurring revenue, ARR, at a record $4.4 billion.
Okay, $4.4 billion ARR. How's the growth?
It was up 22% year over year, which is solid growth, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
But it has slowed down a bit compared to previous rates.
Why the slowdown?
We do have to mention the outage. There was that major Falcon outage on July 19th last year. It was pretty significant, impacted about 8.5 million customer computers globally.
Right, I remember that. Big headlines. How are they addressing that?
Management believes the core value of Falcon means there won't be long-term damage to customer relationships. But they did offer compensation packages, things like discounted Flex subscriptions to the affected businesses.
So those discounts and offers are probably putting a bit of temporary pressure on revenue growth figures.
Yeah, it seems to be the case, yeah. A temporary headwind on the growth rate.
Understood. Now let's talk about the stock itself. Because for a lot of listeners, that's the bottom line. The stock's had a huge run, up 40% this year, trading at record highs. Is there more room to run in, say, the rest of 2025?
This is where it gets a bit tricky, at least for the near term. That big run-up has pushed the valuation pretty high.
How high?
As of late June, its price-to-sales ratio, the PS ratio, was around 29.1.
29? That sounds steep. How does that compare?
It's significantly higher than many other players in the AI cybersecurity space. I mean, ratios vary, but 29 is definitely pricing in a lot of future growth already. It suggests the market has very high expectations.
So potential investors now are paying a big premium.
They are. And Wall Street analysts seem a bit cautious about the near term, too. The Wall Street Journal tracks, I think, 53 analysts covering CrowdStrike. Their average price target is around $482.
And where's the stock trading now?
Slightly above that, actually. So the consensus suggests maybe limited upside or even potential downside for the rest of this year, 2025.
Okay, so the short-term picture for the stock might be less exciting after such a big rally. But you mentioned a long-term view earlier. What does that look like?
Right, this is where the story potentially gets more compelling for longer-term investors. Management has set a pretty ambitious target.
Which is?
They're aiming for $10 billion in ARR by fiscal 2031.
$10 billion, up from the current $4.4 billion.
Exactly. That's potential growth of about 127% over roughly the next 5 to 6 years. If they hit that, or even get close, that could definitely power strong returns for the stock over that period.
And how does that $10 billion target fit into the overall market? Is that market still growing?
Oh, massively. The total addressable market, the TAM, for the kind of security CrowdStrike offers, is estimated at around $116 billion today.
$116 billion.
And management thinks that market could more than double potentially reaching $250 billion in the next few years. Think about cloud adoption, remote work, more connected devices, and sadly, more sophisticated threats. It's all driving demand.
So even if CrowdStrike hits $10 billion, they'd still only have a small fraction of that huge growing market.
A tiny slice, relatively speaking. So the takeaway is kind of nuanced, isn't it? The stock might look expensive now for short-term gains in 2025, but if you have a longer horizon, say 6 years or more, and believe in their ability to execute towards that $10 billion goal within that massive expanding market, well, the opportunity could still be quite significant. How does that longer-term perspective resonate with you when thinking about these kinds of tech investments?
It definitely shifts the focus, doesn't it? Away from trying to time the market this year towards assessing if you believe in the company's strategy and the market's overall growth trajectory over the next half decade or so. Given that cyber threats aren't going away, that long-term need seems undeniable.
Precisely. It's become a fundamental cost of doing business in the digital age.
Well, that brings us towards the end of this deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground on CrowdStrike, starting with their holistic Falcon platform, how it uses AI, that interesting Charlotte AI tool.
Right, and then their growth strategies, the modular approach, the flex subscription, and those reflexes we talked about.
Yeah, the reflexes. And we looked at the financials, strong ARR, but that temporary slowdown, the high current valuation, creating maybe some near-term headwinds for the stock.
Contracted with that ambitious longer-term $10 billion ARR target in a market that's expected to balloon to potentially $250 billion.
Exactly. So, as always, we've tried to cut through the complexity, distill the key points, and give you a solid understanding of what's going on with CrowdStrike and why it matters.
Hopefully it's a useful shortcut to getting informed on, a pretty important company in a critical sector.
Absolutely. So to leave you with something to think about, given how fast cyber threats change and that huge market growth projection, what are the next big challenges or frontiers you think companies like CrowdStrike will need to tackle? And how is this constant battle between attackers and defenders going to keep reshaping, well, all of our digital lives?